At the end of 1999 and the start of 2000, I volunteered in an orphanage in Bolivia, and that really impacted on my life. And then it got to the start of this year and I decided I really needed to do something about my weight. So I started Cash for Kilos. So basically I got friends and family to sponsor me per kilo lost, and that money all went to Australians Caring for Children, who's a group that supports the orphanage that I volunteered in. So I think people probably thought I was going to lose maybe 10 or 15, but so far I've lost 32 kilos. I volunteered at an orphanage in La Paz in Bolivia. It was a state-run orphanage. It was probably one of the best but worst experiences of my life, and I think it's had a huge, I know it's had a huge impact. They were really, really underfunded. They didn't have enough staff. It was dirty. The staff were doing the best that they could, but they just didn't have enough resources. And I think probably the big crunch point for me was a baby that I'd worked with every day during that time. She passed away 3 weeks after I got home, and I felt like I was probably the only person mourning that child. They were having trouble even feeding the babies enough because formula was so expensive. So they were actually making the formula up really weak and then putting vegetable oil in to make enough calories for the babies. So I just decided to do little bits, you know, whatever I could around work and study to fundraise for Australians Caring for Children to be able to provide more for that orphanage, and probably about 7 other orphanages in total. Money raised is distributed through Australians Caring for Children. We have representatives in each country that approach the charity, and it's allocated on a needs basis, so it can cover things like immunisation, food, things like haircuts, subsidising the wages of psychologists, occupational therapists and doctors. I was in the babies room a lot of the time in Bolivia, and at one point, you know, there may have been 2 staff and more than 20 babies. So just being able to subsidise a wage for, you know, a third or even a fourth person to go in and just help do things like change the babies and hold them to feed them rather than prop feeding them just makes a huge difference. The orphanage I was at was very full. They had more children than they were able to cope with at that point. There had been babies left on the doorstep just prior to my arrival. The staff were really doing their best, but they were doing the best with not much. I used to tell myself every morning, I'm not going to cry today, I'm not going to cry today if I'm in the baby's room, and I'd be there 2 minutes and I'd be tearing up. So it was good to balance that with working with the older children. They can accommodate about 80 in the orphanage I was at. There have been times it's got up to about 120, and our last reports were about 150. They're getting funding from the government of about 83 cents per child per week to feed, clothe, house these kids. So to me that demonstrates just how desperately reliant they are on the little bits of funds that other people like myself and people around the world can provide them.